tube. Sometimes literally like this. Come on. Go up the tube. There's bugs. So I don't look at everything. I kind of do bees and wasps and ants, and I'm interested in what are literally bugs. Like there is a little one running around in there. I think it's fantastic seeing all these ant hills, because they're always a good indication of grass that hasn't been ploughed, and it's probably quite often been under livestock for a long time, so just low intensity grazing, and the ants have the opportunity to make these mounds, and they're made by a species called the yellow meadow ant. It's actually quite common and widespread. It's an underground ant, so you very rarely see it on the surface. Lives almost its entire life underground, and they're smart things. They like to engineer their environment. They like to make sure that where they're living it's absolutely bang on in terms of their internal conditions, the moisture, the heat and so on, and so they make these structures where they can, because it allows them to control how warm their larvae get, and in doing so they change the nature of their soil, because they're actually pulling a lot of very fine material up, and they create dry heaps which have a north, south, east, west aspects, and so you find in a lot of places actually the plants will be different on one side of an anthill to the other, and on top of an anthill compared to the sides. Ants are remarkable environmental engineers. You know, a lot of talk about beavers as engineers of the landscape. Ants are really good engineers of the landscape. They move plants around, they affect how aphids are affecting plants, because they're farming aphids. They're doing all sorts of things to the environment. So as I say, this is yellow meadow ant here. I've seen at least one other species walking around, and I think on this site alone I've recorded so far 7 different species of ant, including some that are really sort of sandy soil specialists. So having that diversity and having that continuity, I think is really good for maintaining this sort of richness of landscape that we see here. I've spent a few sort of half days here when I can, picking up stuff, and I've had some species which are nationally rare, nationally scarce, and I know there's lots more to be discovered. There will be more to be discovered. It just, if the time could be put into actually looking in detail at some of the insect groups that are here. I belong to a club called the Kent Field Club, which is the Natural History Society of Kent. We've been going 70 years this year, and we are a group of naturalists who like getting out in the field and finding wildlife, and telling other people about it, and joining clubs like that, or other clubs if you're interested in other groups. Really good way to learn. I think it's nationally important. We know part of it is a site of special scientific interest already, so recognised as nationally important. The parts of it that aren't currently designated are easily as good as the rest, easily. So no, I've no doubt at all this is a nationally important site. Size matters. It does. It's I mean, partly because sites like this, the acid grassland sites of this size, there's a handful in Kent. I was having a look on the map, just a handful. Things that are comparable, maybe Knoll Park, Hothfield, which is not got a lot of the grasslands, mainly heathland, and Dartford Heath. So there's just this tiny handful of these sites. They're small. This is actually, you know, if you're talking about something to be really super rich, this is a small site. Not tiny, it's good enough, you know, it's got these populations of birds and things, but size, what goes with size is diversity. You can get more diversity in. If you which means you get a bigger range of species, and you can get bigger populations of species, of individual species, and those two things are really important. Large populations are more able to withstand shocks to the system, the kind we're getting with change to the climate now, for instance. They're also more likely to spread and colonise new sites, which is another thing to do with nature recovery. You can't do it without big sites. The report, the Lawson report that looked at originally some years back, looked at nature recovery in Britain, said more, bigger, better and joined up, and the bigger is essential. You don't want to you chop a bit off a site like this, the loss is disproportionately large because you've shrunk it down, you've now then made it even more vulnerable to future shocks. I looked at how much acid grassland there was in Kent, and it's less than a fifth of 1% of the county. So I think if just, we can afford, in terms of land use, we can afford to save sites like this. We're not losing anything. So when John Lawton wrote his report, and he talks about more, bigger, better and joined up, and the joined up thing is interesting because it is about not seeing sites in isolation, not seeing particular habitat types even in isolation, but seeing them as part of a big web with continual movement and dynamism between them. So a site like this I think it's fascinating because you've got the Stour Valley down there, you've got Trenley Park Wood, which is a nice wood and acid substrate like this. This site is sharing species with all those. I just, before I came to this morning, I saw a damselfly. I was having a look at damselfly, seeing if I could identify it. Well, that damselfly would have hatched in ditches down in the wetland parts here, down in the river, or maybe at Stob Marsh, and it's come up here because part of its life cycle, when it emerges from the water, it has to spend some time away from the water. If it hangs around the water, it's too much competition from the sexually mature members of its species. It has to get away, it feeds up, becomes fully adult, and then it moves back. And that's coming out here to feed on insect, and then it's going back to the wetland where its larvae will live in the water and feed on other insects. So there is a connection. Yeah, you'd think, oh, that's wet, this is dry. Actually, they're part of a whole system which is linked up by the species that are using it. So one thing about all the work that has gone on here with, I've been doing some insect recording, people have done fungi, there's lots of local people doing stuff, the plants have been recorded. That information is essential to have if you're looking at the long-term future of a site like this, how to protect and manage it. Because what you need to know is what it's got, what's most important in a local, regional, national context to what it's got, what those things need and how they interact, or even potentially conflict with each other, and then you can use that to put together a site management plan that contains the measures that are needed to conserve, improve a site for the future. And of course you need everybody involved in that, and particularly a site like this which is so obviously used by local people. It's an urban fringe site, it's obviously important recreationally, is to engage with the users as well, to find a way of allowing that sort of enjoyment of the countryside, exercise, just being outdoors that people love to do, allow that to continue in a way that doesn't conflict with or maybe even helps the ongoing nature conservation interest. I was thinking that we'd quite often see me on a place like this lying face down, just with my nose almost on the ground looking for stuff, but there's a lot of things on a place like this that everyone can see and look out for that is important. I mean, I've been seeing butterflies, several species of butterflies we walked around today. There's the small copper that feeds on sheep sorrel, which is this little thing here, that little plant, which loves these sandy sites, and that's food plant of the small copper butterfly, which we've seen today. I've seen small heath butterfly, which is a thing that's been declining, a grassland butterfly. So you're looking at stuff here that's relatively big and easy to find, but is important. Number of bumblebee species on this site. And bumblebees, yes, they're bees, yes, they have stings, but they don't bother people. If you don't bother a bumblebee, it really doesn't want to bother you. And so you can get up close with some fairly big insects, sizable things that you can recognise by eye. And once you start to recognise a few of them by eye, you can see how many different species you're seeing, because they have different patterns of yellow and black and red on them. There's quite a few species of grasshoppers and bush crickets on here, which come the summer this will be alive with, and it'll be, for people with younger ears than mine, it'll be buzzing, absolutely a buzz with grasshopper song. And just at the moment they are absolutely tiny, so that they've just hatched out from their eggs and you see them hopping about as little tiny babies, but they'll be big and obvious to see, and they'll be enjoying the sun of this really open sort of grassy vegetation.